Hello, and welcome to the African Community Forum. My name is Earl Ofori, and I'll be your host for today. The objective of this program is to inform the African community about the resources available for better integration within the community. On today's show, we are joined by the local government agencies that represent the African diaspora in a discussion on several topics of interest to the diaspora. Daniel Koroma works at the Montgomery County Office of Community Partnership and is the community liaison for the African and Caribbean community. Iman Awad is the administrator to the Governor's Commission on African Affairs in Maryland. And Mamadou Samba is the director of the Mayor's Office on African Affairs in the District of Columbia. According to the Washington Post, the number of African-born residents in the United States has doubled every decade since the 1970s, the metro area being the most popular place to live. What makes Washington, D.C. metropolitan area the most popular place to live for Africans in the diaspora?
Well, thank you so much for that question, and it's indeed a very important question because what we've seen is that people start their preparation to come to the United States months in advance, even before they go for their visas. And usually what will happen is that the dialogue will take place from the village level or the city level, where people will say, hey, I'm going to America. And somebody else will say, yeah, I have a sister or brother who lives in America. And, in a nutshell, they don't really care where in America. But conversations are happening because, and what will happen is that somebody will say, well, here you go, this is my sister's number. And that conversation will take place. And usually it takes place around, again, how can that person easily, not only when they come in, but somebody to hold their hands from the airport and help them to maybe find an apartment and a way for them to integrate into the community. We are so blessed now because of our proximity to Washington, D.C., which has been an international city with the embassies and diplomats coming in and out. That has been able to make not only Washington, but especially Montgomery County very attractive to people who are coming from Africa. And so some of the things we've done is to look for those entry points. So we know when people come, if they get here on Friday, they go to their masjid and pray. If they get here on Friday, on Sunday, they go to the church. So we've made sure through our office, we have a faith liaison who basically connects all the faith traditions here in Montgomery County. And when people come, if they go to their church, the church, or they go to the mosque, they're able to basically not only connect through to the imam or to the pastor, but they're all the community leaders who can help them navigate what it takes to live here in Montgomery County.
What makes the district area attractive to live or even to work for Africans in the diaspora?
Sure. So you're right. So the number of Africans in the metropolitan area is growing. In fact, in this metropolitan area, we have over 162,000 African immigrants living in this area, according to the latest census. And those are the numbers that we know. If you add those who are undocumented and you add those who do not want to be counted, those numbers lay between 200,000 at least. And so we are the second largest, right after New York, which has the largest number of African immigrants at 212,000. But what we've seen is more and more Africans are moving in this area because of the diversity, because of the economic opportunity, going to school. And you have to understand the dynamics of African immigrants. We tend to go to places where we are comfortable. We have family members, we have relatives, and this area has just that. And so you have the Ethiopian community. If you go to, for example, on U Street in D.C., not only you can see how unique it is in the sense of the number of African immigrants who live there, own businesses, but you look at the African American culture, you look at the district in general, and so it shows you how welcoming this area is, how receptive people are and open to helping immigrants. And you add the fact that we have an Office on African Affairs, which is the only Office on African Affairs in the entire United States. You have Montgomery County Advisory Board, African Liaison, you have the governor. So what you see, the dynamics that you see in this area exists nowhere else. And this is why people are coming here more and more.
Interesting. Tell us a little bit about how the government in the area is adjusting to the changing demographics.
I think just, adding to the conversation, the formation of the Montgomery County African Advisory Board, the formation of the Office of African Affairs in D.C. and the Governor's Commission speaks for itself. The government is responding by creating these advisory boards to make sure that the African diaspora is heard and represented.
That's correct. And so also what we've seen here in Montgomery County, so Montgomery County is now a majority minority county, which means if you count all the minority communities, we are more than 51% of the population. But when you look at the total population, 33%, so 1 out of every 3 residents was born outside of the United States. So our story is connected to the, again, migration of other immigrants into the county. And a part of that foreign-born population, the African community, is 20%. And it's growing very fast, as Mamadou mentioned. Now, Montgomery County is the #1 destination for Ethiopians and for Cameroonians in the entire nation. One of the cities we have here in Montgomery County, Gaithersburg, is the most diverse in the entire country. So we see that not only because of family ties, but as Mamadou said, I completely agree, the structures that have been put in place by the local government in DC, in Montgomery County, and with the support of the state is what's really making people feel welcome to come to our area.
Talk a little bit about what some of the challenges are as far as education is concerned for diasporans in the area.
Sure. So education, to me, it's all about access. Because I believe when you have a level playing field and you give access to anyone, but more specifically, we see that the Africans that are coming are very highly educated. We see that those who come have at a minimum a bachelor's degree. And so what some of the challenges we've heard of is the credentialing system that we have here in the United States as a whole. And the reason for that is because in many of the countries they come from, their country of origin, when you send your credentials for it to be evaluated, you have to contact those countries. Well, we all know that communication in some of those universities are not the best. You know, some of them don't even have a website. Can you imagine that? And as a result, it not only delays that person's integration into the local system, because now they have to wait for their credentials to come, for them to maybe apply for a job that they really qualify for. So that when it comes to education, I think if we can find a way to improve, the credentialing system, whereby we can acknowledge. Now, Montgomery College, I will give them credit, have been doing some work around that, but it's good probably for us to have more of a uniform system within the state or within the country.
Based off of what he just said, what is Governor Hogan's office, doing to make, the access to education very, easy or,
sure.
navigable for Africans, from the, in the diaspora?
I couldn't say it any better than Daniel just said. I think that #1, it is credentialing. From the data that we do have from the American Community Census, it's to the African community's testament that they are amongst the highest educated and amongst the highest earners in the state of Maryland. Again, we want to focus on making sure that they are applying to jobs and qualifying for the jobs that they have been educated towards, and the credentialing is absolutely, a top priority. In addition, as we're getting into college season, we want to make sure that our African students are directly connected with our Maryland Higher Education Commission, and they do know all of the resources, the financial aid, the programs that are available to them. And of course, for their families, we want to make sure that there is language access so they can use any language to communicate with our offices. She
mentioned Mamadou language access. Could you talk about some of the programs in that sphere?
Sure. So in the District of Columbia, there is a Language Access Act, which requires service providing agencies to provide either interpretation to residents who come seek services and may not speak that language. So for example, if somebody has needs in a particular office, like my office, and they speak Amharic, they're not fluent in English, they have the right to be, because essentially we don't want to allow somebody's inability to speak English be a barrier to them getting access to those services. So we have to, the law essentially says that let's use the resources that are available either through the language line, either through interpretation, to make sure that if a Daniel Koroma comes to my office and does not speak English and needs to get a driver's license, we provide him with a translation that is important. But all of that ties into the education piece that you just mentioned. And so, as mentioned, we know African Americans are the most educated. As a matter of fact, according to the Migration Policy Institute, 42% of African immigrants earn a bachelor's degree, more than the national average, which is about 41%. And about 16% have either graduate or a professional degree. As a matter of fact, 1 out of 3 immigrants with a PhD is African. So we are not, discussing the fact that they're smart. The idea is what Daniel mentioned, the fact that when they do come, either our degrees aren't recognized, it takes us a long time to get interpreted, either so we can go to college, which means in between what we have to do is we have to go drive a cab, work in hotels, and so we end up being stuck there and never having a way out or pathway to working at our level. So you have this dichotomy between either brain waste or brain drain when we come to the United States, and which is something that we need to address. And as mentioned earlier, it should be a top priority for all of the in the region at least.
Thank you for expounding on that. Now, briefly, tell us, what are some of the issues of housing in the diaspora?
Well, they're not as bad. I mean, housing in this area is an issue for all of us. I mean, affordable housing is something that is talked about throughout this area. The Mayor Bowser talks about it. I know it's something that is talked about on this side as well. But it is important to know that, at least according to the research, 33% of African immigrants in this area have invested in home mortgage loans, which is higher than New York and Los Angeles combined.
We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with other hot topics of discussion within the African diaspora.
Don't worry, 74 people were picked before me in the NFL draft.
To fight childhood obesity, United Way and the NFL are helping kids play at least 60 minutes a day.
Okay, time for the team obstacle course. Yay!
What this place needs is more healthy kids. To get involved or donate, go to unitedway.org/play60.
Now I get it.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, I've been chatting with Daniel Koroma, Iman Awad, and Mamadou Samba, African representatives from Montgomery County, the state of Maryland, and Washington, D.C. respectively. We're talking on hot topics of interest to the African diaspora. Now, Awad, tell us a little bit about the transition in healthcare laws and what it means to the diasporans in the area.
Well, in Maryland, we believe that with a healthy African community and a healthy Maryland, that's the only way that Maryland's going to thrive together. And we are working with our Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, specifically with our Department of Minority Health and Health Disparities, to make sure that our constituents are aware of the Affordable Care Act and access to health care. They can visit our Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, which outlines the different programs, health programs, and access to health care for individuals. And of course, Maryland's goal is to make it accessible and affordable.
Tell us quickly, what is the Affordable Care Act?
The Affordable Care Act is essentially Obama's initiative to ensure that U.S. citizens have access to cheap and affordable insurance. And so we have to be able to understand how that fits into the context of the African community. And if you look at the African community, according to the research, we are the healthiest among all immigrant groups. But if you look at our challenges specifically, they are very scary. What I mean is you have 26% of African immigrants who do not have health insurance. You have those who, as I mentioned earlier, when we come to the United States, we face this all of a sudden very complicated healthcare system. HMOs, PPOs, fees for service, Obamacare, and all of those things are barriers for us. And also you add the fact that there are issues that are the stereotype and the stigma that exists in our community. I joke about it sometimes and I say that you will never see an African go to an African doctor because they don't want that. They think that doctor know a cousin that they know and they think if I go to that doctor, my cousin will know that I have cancer or AIDS. So we have to be able to create a platform where we are discussing the importance of us having access to the resources. And you have those who are afraid that because I'm undocumented, if I go to the doctor, I'll get deported. So all of those are barriers that we need to look at separately, but also collectively in how it fits into the entire healthcare debate.
Thanks, Mamadou. Now, Daniel, Mamadou just mentioned the fact that there are some Africans in the diaspora who are undocumented.
That's
and
correct.
As a result of that, when they take ill, they are afraid to see the doctor.
That's correct.
What are some of the things you can say to these people to, encourage them and to make them aware of the fact that there are avenues through which they can resort to?
Yeah, that's a great question because one of the things that we've done here in Montgomery County and through our Health and Human Services is to make sure that we have wellness clinics. So they're clinics that county residents can go to. They don't ask you for any of your legal papers in terms of your passport, your green card. They don't ask that information at all. All what they want to know is that you live in the county in order for them to serve you. So it is important for people to know that, again, yes, you instead of going to the emergency room, of course, if you have an emergency, that's where you should go. But just let's say for preventative cares or just regular checkup, then it's good for you to use these clinics because these clinics are funded by county taxpayers, and they want to make sure that people use them. And again, they don't ask for any in terms of your legal papers. So another thing, through the outreach that's been done by the African Affairs Advisory Group, and as I say, one of the members there formed an entity, an organization called Immigrant Community Services. And what they've been doing is to make sure that any event, meetings, they will pass out the list of these clinics in various locations, especially those that are in highly concentrated areas where Africans are, to make sure that they are aware that, okay, if your grandmother is here or your mother is here and they don't have insurance, or if you don't understand how the insurance system works, as Mamadou is saying, please take them to these places because we have health and community workers who are also there as well.
Now, Awad, thank you, Daniel.
Sure.
Awad, the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, is known to have one of the most intricate and somewhat advanced transportation network. How does that benefit the African, briefly?
I think it benefits all of Maryland, especially with the lines coming from the Prince George's and the Montgomery County area into DC, making jobs, resources, opportunities accessible through public transit. And outside of the capital region, when you have in Baltimore the MARC train, which runs daily now, and opening up Baltimore and DC together. And just again, with the public transportation, Governor Hogan, one of the first things that he did as governor was roll back the tolls going over to the eastern shore of Maryland, which makes that even easier too.
See, most Africans usually don't plan to stay here that long, and they end up realizing that, oh, I've been here for quite a while. Now, how can the diaspora benefit from some of the systems in place for people who end up staying here longer, for maybe like 10 years or 2 decades or longer? What are some of the systems in place for seniors of that nature?
So the same system that is in place for U.S.-born seniors are available for African seniors or anybody who lives in the U.S. for 10 or 50 years longer. And you're right, most of us, when we come, sometimes we want to be here for 5 years and go home, but we end up staying for 30 years. But that's not a bad thing. I don't know if we need to think daily about going back. As long as we're making an impact where we live. And also, we live in a globalized society where you don't have to be physically in Africa to impact your country. You can be here and do the same thing, or vice versa. So, I think for the most part, we need to make sure that they have access to the resources to be stable, to live comfortably, to be safe, and be healthy. And once you ensure those things, I think you have to leave the rest up to them. You can't do everything. You just have to make sure we live in a safe neighborhood, we can work, our kids go to school, and the rest will come through hard work and sweat and tears.
So in Montgomery County, our county executive recently have a senior summit. And the big area where there was actually access to technology, where we found out that more seniors, again, want to, first of all, age in place, so they want to stay in their homes. So what the county has done is to make sure that through our Health and Human Services that caregivers can go to their homes and provide the services that they need. But also, our county executive needs, he gets a lot of credit because in the heart of downtown Silver Spring, where the new library is, what he's done, there was a plot of land there that the county could have probably disposed of that land and build. A developer can come and build anything on it, but he is basically right now built senior housing, and so that in the heart of downtown Silver Spring, we'll have a senior housing there for our senior. But there are other housing as well that are available. So again, in the senior summit, we had a delegation from the African Affairs Advisory Group, who attended that summit to make sure that, things like, how can these caregivers provide food that was appropriate? So, and in terms of a cultural appropriate. So if you used to eat in your eba, your banku, how can the caregiver not only prepare it, but to make sure it's healthy as well for you?
We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with other hot topics of discussion within the African diaspora.
Morning, Gary. We are GetSchooled.com. You want a college education, don't you? Gary, financial aid forms. Biology homework, G. What? Picking a college, man. You and us go together like tacos and Tuesday.
And I love tacos.
Welcome back. Daniel Koroma, Eman Awad, and Mamadou Samba are government officials representing the African diaspora in D.C. and Maryland. Eman, tell us some of the measures put in place by the government in Maryland to help Africans have access to jobs.
Sure. So one of the top priorities for the Hogan administration is both creating and retaining jobs in Maryland. We're going to see this session some tax incentives for business owners, which will make it much easier for our small businesses and medium-sized businesses to thrive in our state. But more importantly, one of our resources is called the Maryland Workforce Exchange, and it's a one-stop website that you can go to and find jobs, resume writing tips, trainings, anything that you're looking for to help you get the best job possible.
Thank you. Mamadou, Washington, D.C., what is the African Affairs Commission doing to motivate Africans to look for jobs in their professions, especially those who qualify?
Sure. No, definitely. So we are working very closely with the Commission and the entire D.C. government agencies to ensure that not just African, but all D.C. residents have access to those jobs. And so you have something like the Youth Employment Services, where the summer employment services, where the youth of 18 to 24 years old have opportunity to work for the summer and gain new skills. And you have the Workforce Investment Council that is supposed to think about or put together structures for district residents to be able to earn skills and work in their fields. And so, but I think for the African community, we also have to understand the fact that there's 18% of African immigrants, at least that we know of, live below the poverty line, which are challenges that are associated with what Daniel mentioned earlier about their degrees, being able to work in low-skill jobs, and the transition process. And so we just have to ensure that they have the information necessary to apply for those multicultural jobs. They have to hire people who speak French and Amharic. And we have to also put in place, and this is what we already do with our ECHO program, the African Diaspora Coding Academy, to teach girls how to develop mobile application, which is a hard market right now. And so I think we're doing the right thing. It just takes it takes time, but it also takes a special understanding of the unique challenges of the African community.
Thank you, Mamadou. Now, Daniel, a lot of us came here from respective countries in Africa, and we all started somewhere. For those who are watching right now who want to know how to get to the top,
Sure.
Tell us in your own personal experience, what did you do to get to where you're at, and how did you start?
That's a great question. So it's important, first of all, to recognize that people come here to either further their education or to find a better life. And absolutely, in Montgomery County, we have WorkSource Montgomery, which again provides, together with the state, all the tools for people to go and search for jobs, for them to have case management. There are also some grant and scholarships that they can receive if they need to be retrained. But it's also good to have an institution like Montgomery College. Montgomery College, through their workforce development programs. So someone comes into the United States, and let's say, for example, they haven't gotten their credentials evaluated. Through Montgomery College, they can get certificate programs that they can at least take, short-term certificate programs, 3 months, 6 months, or even a year. And those certificates can go along with their credential by the time it gets back. And because many times, as what I've heard and what we've heard, is that employers are looking at, well, we don't know which institution you graduated from. or we're not familiar with the credits that you receive to get your degree. However, if they usually mixed both the certificate that they've received here from one of the local universities or Montgomery College together with their foreign degree, usually they get a better understanding because they would have to show the certificate from this U.S. Institution. So my story is a long one, but that's the journey that I took myself to make sure that I was able to be prepared for the opportunity that I got.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Awad, tell us quickly, we hear you have an African connection. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my family immigrated here from Egypt, and my dad came here towards the end of his high school career, and he didn't actually speak any English, and we joke with him that the only reason he passed high school was because he was a great soccer player, and the teachers didn't want to bench him. But, you know, they came here really for the opportunity for myself and my older sister for the education, and from that, you know, there just kind of grows a passion for working within the community affairs, because without the community's support, I don't think my family or myself and my sister would be where we are now.
That's interesting. Mamadou, tell us, what do you have to say to that immigrant African who is watching right now, who is probably working somewhere in a retail job that they know they are more than qualified for? How do you motivate them? How do you encourage them to keep doing what they're doing to get to where they need to be?
I mean, I think my own story is a good enough motivating factor. I mean, I one of those guys who I came to the United States as my father worked at a Senegalese embassy as a diplomat. So I came to those channels, but I wasn't always a diplomat when I stayed. When I came after I came to the United States, he went back and I became a typical immigrant. I went to Atlanta and I finished high school, and I really had no plans after high school. I spent most of my time selling T-shirts on the sidewalk of Atlanta, fixing watches in flea markets, and working 2 to 3 jobs. And at some point, I decided that I had to go to college, and I didn't have the resources. I just took a leap of faith, went to South Carolina on a scholarship that I was promised that never actually materialized itself. So I spent 4 years sleeping on a floor that is as soft as or as hard as this floor that we're standing on, going to bed many nights with no food in my stomach. But I wanted to make it. I wanted to prove myself that I was able to do it. And so through college, I couldn't tell you how many times I fasted during the month of Ramadan and not have any food to eat. But those are challenges that I had to go through as a young immigrant. And I worked work hard as hard as I could. Finished high school, finished college, got a graduate degree. It was still tough. I remember having to drive limousines to survive. But those are the stories of the immigrants when you come here, and all of us have our own stories. But those are the stories of challenges, of struggles, and which is what I had to go through to be where I am. So I'm really glad I've gone through it, and those immigrants that are watching can do even more if they just follow their passions.
Thanks a lot for sharing your story,
thank
Mamadou.
you. Thank you.
The offices of Mamadou, Eman, and Daniel plays a pivotal role in connecting the diaspora to resources of the government. It is quite advisable as an individual or as a group to confer with these offices and join forces to further the prosperity of the African diaspora. Thank you for watching.